first, in this digital age, when we are all tied to our electronic devices, it's been a rough go over the last 24 hours for a lot of customers of Verizon. The wireless carrier says service should now be restored following a major outage that lasted for around 10 hours and impacted hundreds of thousands of people. But Lance Ulanoff, the editor at large for TechRadar, is joining me now to talk about the widespread sightings of SOS. No one wants to see it, Lance.
That's all I had for hours and hours and hours. There was a lot of stuff I couldn't do. I got really comfortable and familiar with SOS.
Oh my goodness. So essentially it just took us back to like before we had cell phones for a few hours.
Yeah, you felt like, should I, use Morse code? Should I just shout into the distance? There were some people I talked to who actually didn't even notice because they were working in an office and their phones were connected to Wi-Fi. So they didn't see it because you can get, text and calls, through Wi-Fi. So they didn't see it until they got on the train or went home. And some people were very aware of it. They couldn't do basic things. They couldn't access some of the services. Some couldn't contact emergency services. So there was a range of frustration. It was one of the most extended and biggest outages we've seen in the last 12 months. And obviously, it is the biggest outage of 2026 at the moment.
And we hope at the end of 2026, we'll just say it was the biggest outage. But let's talk about what went wrong. What happened? Do we know at this point?
So Verizon has said it was a software issue, which means the good news is it wasn't a cyber attack, which I kind of thought it wasn't. In fact, recent history with some of these outages has been that it's been just a software update or some hardware malfunction. So that's what they're saying. There's no more details than that. But the other major news out of Verizon is that they're going to give affected customers a $20 credit.
Well, how nice of them, $20 for everyone suffering. So what does this say about, well, maybe this is a two-part question, so I'll start with, what does this say about where we are that, a software upgrade or something that seems simple and, kind of menial ends up affecting so many thousands of people all at once?
Well, once again, it's a sign that we don't seem to have the redundancies that we should have in place. We've seen this with internet service providers. We've seen it with other cell carriers, and now we've seen it with Verizon, where what seems like a simple software update breaks a lot of code and creates a cascade, which brings down a big chunk of an entire network. That really shouldn't happen. What should happen is you run the code, you put the code in, either you run it in sort of a test environment and make sure everything's going to be fine, and then you put it live, or you put it live and there's a break, and what you do is you fall back to a version of the software that was not running the code. Unfortunately, it seemed as if Verizon didn't know for many hours what had gone wrong. And they were dealing with a lot of customer complaints, and I will give Verizon credit. They were pretty communicative. In fact, this is the rare instance where I've been covering these things for quite a while, where within the first 40 minutes, we had confirmation from Verizon that the network was in fact down. Sometimes they won't even tell us. They won't answer us. So we had that. They kept communicating. They just didn't have a lot of real tangible information other than we're working on it. And so we all had to be patient and sit on our hands.
Which is tough to do when your hands are usually wrapped around your cell phone, then it's not working. So if this is the worst of 2026 thus far, and maybe Verizon is learning from some other companies that have gone through things recently, what did your mind immediately go back to in terms of maybe a bad outage that this resembled, that Verizon kind of stepped up their game from?
I mean, we've had outages from AT&T and Verizon previously, and some some internet service providers, like even AWS and others that provide the back end for a lot of sites that you visit. The one thing I think they learned is the communication part. They're still not, 10 hours is a long time, right? I obviously it could have been worse. It could have been days, which would have been disastrous on so many levels. So they move quickly. they speak with one voice. That is important, and I think they've gotten better at that. There's no mixed signals here, no communication that people don't understand. Uh, but again, the core part of it, I'm not sure they've solved. I'm not sure that they maybe it's resources, maybe it's not plausible to create that kind of redundancy because the network is now so big. But people and businesses and emergency services all rely on networks like this. So I think they just have to do more to ensure that if there's a blip, it lasts minutes, not hours.
Yeah. What are some other things that you would suggest, like moving forward? Clearly the time frame is one, but what are some other things that you think, heaven forbid, but we kind of know, when the next outage happens for someone, they could do better?
I'm not entirely, I think when the next outage comes and the part they can do better on is maybe better on the credits. I think that $20 is going to seem a little low for people. Now, Verizon said, this is not equivalent to what went on here. They're not trying to say that it is, but at the same end, and I know they're trying to manage costs, but I thought that at the very least they could have said, look, we know that it cost in 1 month for quality service for one phone, it costs about $50 on our platform. So why not a $50 credit? That's just my thought. For consumers, though, in these situations, I tell people don't panic. One, talk to your friends, if anyone in person to double check that are you having the network problem. Restart your phone. Turn airplane mode on, then off. All of those things will make sure that if there's a network to connect to, you can. If you're in a situation where you absolutely need to contact people, you're in danger or trouble, lost, modern phones, starting with the iPhone 14 and some of the more recent Android phones, have satellite services. Now, that means that if you're outside and you can see the sky, you can point your phone in that direction and it'll guide you to the nearest satellite, and you can send text messages either to emergency services or to family members to let them know where you are, that you're okay. So you can do those things. And in the worst possible circumstance, if you feel that you always want to back up, you could sign up for a second cell service provider, maybe a smaller one that costs less, get another phone, and it's a backup. So if you ever think that I absolutely always have to be in contact all the time, you have that as a backup. And finally, if you have a friend who's on the network that's not broken down, you can ask them to use them as a hotspot. Can I connect to your phone so I can get online just temporarily to get some things done?
Lance, I absolutely loved all of that advice, but somehow I see that burner phone idea getting somebody in trouble. You can use that. You can use that excuse if you want to. I'm just saying, might not work in your household. Would anybody still be having lingering issues now?
There's been reports. If you look at Down Detector, people are still reporting stuff, although the reports kind of filter out to some of the other networks, and that's because they're not having problems. But if you're if you're on AT&T trying to reach someone on Verizon and you can't reach them, you think there's something wrong with your network. Turns out it's just Verizon. But the reports of Verizon outages have gone way, way down. So it takes a little while for it all to filter out. Remember that when the network comes back, what tends to happen is everybody floods onto it. They've been waiting. There's all this stuff they got to get done. They overload the network. And then the ability to get any data through it's like a tiny little pipe at that point. So patience is usually a good idea. If you don't have to do something right away, wait. And then probably in an hour or so, it'll be a lot easier.
And just to circle back, so if this should happen to somebody, Wi-Fi should kind of be your savior, essentially?
Yeah, well, first of all, Wi-Fi is not on the cell network. Okay, it's connected. It's series of wires to the usually the Wi-Fi is the local wireless network in your office. There's a node on your ceiling or on your somewhere in your house, and that goes basically wired. That goes to a fiber optic network all the way to the backbone. So you can still use that. So it's not the same as the cell network.
And do you think we're going to see more of these? And I don't mean more as in will another one happen, but do you think we're going to start having more of these more often?
Well, it's hard to say. We've certainly had in the last couple of years, we've had some notable ones. I made a prediction at the end of last year that because of AI, that there will be more attacks that could jeopardize networks because it's easier to craft them and make new ones and spin them out. Now, obviously, this was not an attack, but I do think that those outages which are caused by attacks could be added on to the ones that are simply a mistake that happened within the network. So I think it's altogether possible. Again, it's also, these networks are still, they've grown really big. There's so many people on them. They're intricate systems. And they have a failure rate that's based on making small changes that can create unforeseen circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other things that we should take away from this when we're seeing this and kind of, preparing ourselves for the future? Any other takeaways that you got that maybe aren't being talked about?
I mean, honestly, it's a reminder about how we stay connected to the people we care about, and the things that we care about. We are heavily reliant on these networks on our phones, and nobody has landlines anymore. And so we have to think about how are we staying in touch. And I think it's something to consider that, you'll notice that the youngest generations coming in are very interested in the analog world, sort of classic stuff like VHS and record players, vinyl, and original, photography where you develop the film. And there's something to that. There's something to those physical connections. So, when you're with people, be with people as opposed to with your phone, because your phone will give up on you and your family probably won't.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lance. Great chatting with you. I hope that we don't have another outage to talk to you about very soon.
Yeah. Yes. Let's not talk again. Okay.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Fox 32 Chicago. Subscribe now for the stories that matter and never miss what's next.